Hello everyone. Today I'll be discussing the electrocardiogram, ECG or EKG, its key waves, their clinical significance, and the major arrhythmias that can be identified with this tool. What is an ECG? Why is it important to understand if you're thinking about pursuing a career in the medical field? Well, an ECG is a graphical representation of the heart's electrical activity. It is essential for diagnosing and monitoring heart conditions, helping clinicians evaluate the rhythm and health of the heart. Here are the ECG waves and their significance. This is the P wave. The P wave represents atrial depolarization, the electrical activation of the atria. A normal P wave is smooth and rounded. Abnormalities here may indicate atrial enlargement or conditions like atrial fibrillation. This is the QRS complex. This represents ventricular depolarization, which causes the ventricles to contract and pump blood. The QRS complex is a narrow in a healthy heart. A widened QRS may suggest bundle branch block or ventricular origin of rhythm. This is the T wave. The T wave represents ventricular repolarization, the resetting of the ventricles for the next contraction. An inverted or peak T wave could signify electrolyte imbalances or other cardiac conditions. This is the PR interval. This measures the time taken for the electrical conduction from the atria to the ventricles. A prolonged PR interval might suggest first-degree heart block. This is the ST segment. This is the flat section between the QRS complex and the T wave. Elevation or depression is critical and may indicate myocardial infarction or ischemia. The common arrhythmias are These are common arrhythmias and their ECG patterns. So, this is atrial fibrillation. This irregular rhythm has no distinct P waves. It indicates uncoordinated atrial activity and increases stroke risk. Ventricular tachycardia. This is a rapid, wide QRS complexes, as you can see. They're often life-threatening and requires immediate intervention. Bradycardia, which is a heart rate of less than 60 beats per minute. It can be normal in athletes, but may indicate conduction problems like sinus node dysfunction. ST myocardial infarction, STEMI. It is elevated ST segments in specific leads, a hallmark of acute heart attack requiring urgent reperfusion therapy. Premature ventricular contractions, early, wide, and bizarre QRS complex. They're often benign but could indicate underlying cardiac issues. Multiple choice questions. Which wave on the ECG represents atrial depolarization? T wave, P wave, QRS complex, or ST segment? The answer is P wave. The P wave corresponds to the electrical activation of the atria before they contract. What does a prolonged PR interval on the ECG indicate? Atrial fibrillation, first-degree heart block, STEMI, ventricular tachycardia. The answer would be B, first-degree heart block. The PR interval measures the time for the electrical conduction between the atria and ventricles. A prolonged interval suggests delayed conduction. What is the defining feature of atrial fibrillation on an ECG? Elevated ST segment, narrow QRS complex, irregular rhythm without distinct P waves or peak T waves. The answer, irregular rhythm without distinct P waves. Atrial fibrillation is characterized by chaotic atrial activity, which is reflected as an irregular rhythm with absent P waves. Which arrhythmia is associated with rapid, wide QRS complex? Atrial flutter, ventricular tachycardia, sinus bradycardia, or premature atrial contractions? The answer would be ventricular tachycardia. Ventricular tachycardia arises from the ventricles, leading to wide QRS complexes and a rapid heart rate. The last one, ST segment elevation in ECG is most often associated with which condition? Myocardial infarction, first-degree heart block, atrial fibrillation, or PVCs? The answer is myocardial infarction. ST elevation is a classic marker of myocardial infarction, especially STEMI, requiring an immediate medical attention. Thank you so much for watching.